We can now begin the event. So today's event is Ocean Data for Sustainable and Profitable Fisheries, with a focus on the Western Hemisphere. If you did miss part one, recordings are available on SafeVet's FishTech Connect community platform under the Ocean Observing space. There will be a QR code at the end and links which you can use to access this platform. So before we start, for those of you who are not familiar with SafeVet, which stands for Seafood and Fisheries Emerging Technologies, we bring technology solutions to the seafood and fisheries sector relating to sustainable fishing. We are an impartial convener that showcases tech through our community platform, FishTech Connect. We also host an in-person conference. The next event takes place in the Philippines in September next year. And lastly, we've just launched our new tech user case study interactive map, Sea Tech in Motion. Again, you can access these tools through our webs. So we're going to move on now. So let's move on to the main event, why we're here today. I'd like to introduce you to Emma Hesler. Emma is a program specialist of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, IOC, Secretariat, that manages GOOS. So without further ado, over to you, Emma, and thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Inga, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening, late or not. So I'm going to give a kind of a little bit of a background for the Fishing Vessel Observing Network, how it fits into the global ocean observing system. Next slide, please. So a little bit of the basics as to why we really observe the ocean across all the different variables and the different networks that we have. Ocean data is vital for weather and various warnings, for climate, which we know very well. It's also vital for the blue economy, fisheries amongst that, but also for things like community adaptation, be that to storm surge or various extremes, and all the biological and ecosystems, our carbon strategies and ocean health. The ocean plays such a broad role in the Earth system, and it's so vast that no one country can observe it. And so the Global Ocean Observing System, GOOS, is really here to help coordinate and kind of lead the thinking in this area. So next slide, please. So GOOS really plays a role in terms of enabling and evolving a system, a global ocean observing system. On the one hand, we work with the various observing communities, the networks, the biological communities also, and various partners in terms of the collecting or the observing of the ocean, and then also interacting with the users and beneficiaries, some of the global mandates, such as conventional biodiversity, etc., to ensure that the data we're collecting will meet these global needs and also meet the needs of other users, such as the weather systems, etc. So we sit there kind of working with both the communities and also the users to ensure that the data that's coming out of the Global Ocean Observing System will meet a variety of needs and support governments, communities, and a healthy ocean. So next slide, please. So this is just sort of a visual that shows one of the core elements of GOOS, the essential ocean variables, that is a framework for the minimum set of variables that we need to observe the status and the changes in a set of ocean phenomena, and that they also meet the needs of the various global mandates, from sustainable ocean management through safety of life at sea, disaster risk reduction, tsunamis, the global biodiversity framework, etc., and biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. So those EOVs are across biogeochemistry, the physical variables, and the biology and ecosystems, and there are also a few human impact variables also. Next slide, please. So the other part, apart from the EOV framework, and what we should be observing are the observers themselves. There's GOOS coordinates across some 84 countries involved in ocean observing. There are more than 8,000 plus observing platforms in the water, and you'll hear from FVON their ambition to change that to be many, many more observing platforms involving the fisheries communities. There are 13 mature global ocean observing networks and 4 emerging observing networks. The mature ones you will probably come across: drifting buoys, ghost ship doing the decadal lines, ocean sites moorings, ocean gliders, gloss stations, and our 4 emerging networks using new technologies, but also using new platforms. So we have FVON, the Fishing Vessel Observing Network, the topic of this webinar this evening, using fishing vessels, smart cables, using telecommunications cables, SOCONET, which is observing surface carbon using a variety of different platforms, and one of the new technologies there, the Sunfleet, using uncrewed surface vehicles. On the biological side, we have active biology and ecosystem EOV observing networks, and within the operational system, the real-time system, there are more than 120,000 observations every day that flow into the weather forecasts and the operational ocean models. So next slide, please. So FVON is an emerging network for GOOS. It means they're developing and finding their pathway towards becoming a fully mature network with fully mature data chains, etc. And they become part of the GOOS community, and we support FVON in developing their maturity levels. So under GOOS, an emerging network, and in fact any network, it really covers a unique role in that it's really able to take observations, and you'll see this from Cooper's PowerPoint, that it forms a unique space, filling gaps in sort of coastal areas that observation systems like Argo are not filling. So they have a unique role in our observing system, interact with the other GOOS networks. They have a governance and a management structure, enables them to support new players coming in to join the observing system. They concentrate on having fair data, metadata standards, making sure the data is interoperable with other observing elements, develop best practices so that new users can come on board and don't have to reinvent the wheel. And really also these new emerging networks, they're doing quite a lot of work in engaging new communities and evolving partnerships with the private sector. And so we're really excited about the contribution that FVON and other emerging networks are really coming on board and contributing to the global ocean observing system. So next slide, please. So we got some fantastic webinar speakers this evening. We will have Moninya and Julie and Nikki, who will all be speaking about FVON and sort of practical examples of how the network is aiding the work in their various parts of the world. But first up, we have Cooper van Vranken, who is one of the leaders of the FVON network, who will take us through a little bit of the background of FVON, a few more details before we get into these sort of use case areas. So over to you, Cooper. I think you're up next. Yes.
Thank you so much, Emma. Okay, let me get my slides going here. We'll see how clunky this goes. All right. Please holler if that looks not right, but looks good to me. I'm one of the chairs of FVON, but it's really an honor to present on behalf of all of my colleagues, 3 of whom you're going to hear from today, but there's quite a big group of us here representing many different organizations, academia, research, private sector, NGOs. But I also want to thank Inga and Emma, and particularly Aubrey for organizing this event. This has been a big lift. And one thing that I think is really interesting, kind of setting the stage, is that this is a dual SAFET and GOOS webinar. In the early years of this, I used to be presenting only from the ocean observing perspective or only from the fisheries perspective. And I think that represents tremendous progress that we're bringing this together and talking about this space in between. The last webinar, we had some great examples of some more direct use cases of data for fishing applications. And we're going to have a little bit of that during this one, but then some more kind of what we might think of more in this community is, modeling applications. So I think it's an excellent progression of the material from the different speakers. To tee this up, I want to show a little bit of a timeline of this and really highlight that, this is not a new idea. And, you talk to lots of people around the world and it's like, oh, we've talked about this. Lots of people have had this idea, and there are, some pioneers who started doing this, over 20 years ago, really EMOLT in the Northeast of the United States, and then FVOS, the Fisheries and Oceanography Observing System in the Adriatic in Italy. These are the earliest ones that we know of. And so, these key pioneers have been at this for quite a while, and the sensors and all the different system components have gotten a lot better because of the years and years of work of these key pioneers. And then I think the idea to coalesce this community came together in 2018 when I connected with Patrick at EMONnet, and we started, and that was maybe the birth of the idea of becoming a GOOS network, which in those days was this impossible goal. And so really thrilled to be an emerging network today, which happened in 2004. Also, OceanObs 2019, this was very important. And really when we connected, when those of us in the Atlantic connected with the folks in the Pacific, who you're going to hear from today. But what are we all about? Really, what fishing for data represents is the unique opportunity that fishing vessels represent from putting sensors on the gear, the nets, and the traps, because they profile down, they fish, and then they can be hauled back up. So you're able to capture water column profiles. And then as soon as the instrument surfaces, data can be relayed to a deck hub onto users in near real time. And it's very important that this doesn't get in the way of fishing at all. So it can be, completely seamless. And, every fishing operation can turn into a data collection opportunity. And, this approach of going along for the ride, it eliminates the 2 largest cost components of in-situ observation, which are number 1, the platform, and number 2, the deployment of that platform. Which means on a per unit basis, we can be orders of magnitude more cost efficient. And because there are millions of fishing vessels, I believe 4 million globally is kind of the estimate, this is a tremendously scalable opportunity. But I want to be clear, I'm not saying the other platforms are too expensive, not at all. We need those, and the observations from these platforms are tremendously beneficial, and really what FVON does is complement these platforms and vice versa. And there are many parameters that we're just never going to be able to measure from a fishing vessel. It's a pretty abrasive environment. I do also want to note, I've showed the ZebraTech Moana sensors here, but there are several other key sensor providers who have been contributing to this. You'll hear from the Japanese one, JFE, later, and then there's also Lowell Instruments in the US and NKE in France. And so we're missing this kind of widespread big data approach to coastal observing. And really due to the tremendous success of the Argo program, we have this, distributed data out in the open ocean, but then in close to shore, you can almost kind of trace the bathymetry with the Argo distribution. There is this, very pressing data gap where most of the blue economy and society needs data. And then if you look at where fishing takes place, it's, this perfect yin to the yang to fill those data gaps. So these maps here, the northeast of the United States coming into Canada and then New Zealand, this is actual data distribution from FVON networks in these areas, showing, how decisively we're able to fill these data gaps. And so, but it's not just in these regions. There are, several hundred vessels around the world collecting data, and many on kind of a smaller scale pilot project basis. As you can see, many dots on this map. This map also needs updating. We're missing a few. And so, this looks pretty good. And I'm very happy with what we've been able to accomplish, but we're just getting started. There are millions of fishing vessels, and so aiming for tens of thousands is totally achievable. And as Emma presented in the beginning, we're at 8,000 or 9,000 total platforms within GOOS. And so tens of thousands would be a game changer in terms of the amount of data and the data richness and what we could do with that. But in order to do that, we really need to think differently. And so one of the kind of unique pieces that FVON is bringing forward as a network is, the Financial Innovation Subcommittee, looking at, ways to innovate in the financing of these networks and how to think differently and how to really scale ocean observing. And another piece of this that really means a lot to me as somebody, I actually come from a little bit of a fishing industry background, is, democratizing ocean observing and including these key stakeholders in, the foundation of science and, this process, but also making, ocean observing accessible in regions where it simply just hasn't been possible. And so this is my last slide, but, the FVON team, we're here to help. And so that can take many different forms. But, if you are interested in starting something like this up in your region, we're here to help, advise on the equipment that might be suitable, work with modelers, even kind of academic exchanges and things like that. And so please don't hesitate to get in touch. That's all from me. And so now let's get into the more applied examples. Thanks, everybody.
So hi, folks. My name is Moninya Roughan. I'm assuming you can see my screen and hear me all right. Thanks all of you for joining this webinar. It's really exciting. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to present a project that's near and dear to my heart. And thank you to my collaborators who I see many of you online. So appreciate you joining to hear about our program, plus all some of the others. So as Cooper mentioned, this is a huge initiative to democratize coastal ocean observing. And we use this tagline, sort of widespread, low cost, but I'd like to add that it's reciprocal, robust, research quality and real-time ocean data collection. And those principles are really important to our program as we collaborate really closely with the seafood sector to collect ocean data. So I'm from the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia, and I'm supported by a huge number of people and programs, primarily the Integrated Marine Observing System, our Fisheries Research Development Corporation, an SPC in the Pacific. And we partner with groups around Australia, including FishWell and AFMA. So we're really grateful for their support. So at the heart of our program are the fishers. And the real challenge for us from data sparse regions is to involve fishers as oceanographers. How do we involve the fishing community as oceanographers? How do we get them involved as user observers? And we came up with this, unusual principle for oceanographers that actually the fishers have to benefit first and foremost. Okay, so they have to be at the heart of the program, and what we do, everything we do has to benefit them. So we came up with our guiding principles, where it's reciprocal. So we are deriving mutual benefit through this ocean data collection program for the data user and the observer. And for it to be mutually beneficial, it has to be autonomous, it has to be simple, anonymous, and robust. It also has to be really rigorous. We are oceanographers and scientists. High quality science is one of our really core principles. And so we're working really hard with GOOS and the team here to develop best practices, fair and care data principles, really making sure that the quality of the data that we collect is rigorous. You can get a lot of citizen science programs that have mediocre quality, but it's broad and low cost, and so we sort of tolerate that. But in this program, I think it's really important that people recognize how rigorous the science is. It has to be really robust and reliable. The fishing environment is a really harsh environment. The gear has to be easy to manage, has to be reliable, has to be autonomous, automatic, etc. And to have that real operational benefit to enable real-time decision-making has to be in real time. The data has to be delivered in real time. Now, this was no mean feat. When I started this program back in New Zealand, the Moana Project back in 2016-17, the technology didn't exist. You couldn't get all those boxes ticked in one go. So we worked really closely with ZebraTech, our technology partner in New Zealand, to design a system that actually met all those. It was research quality, it was rigorous, robust, reliable, autonomous, and reciprocal. So the end user or the data collector became a data user and got their data in real time. So I think that's a really key thing to remember, that this is an emerging technology that really has accelerated the way we can collect research quality data in partnership with the fishing community. So since 2017, we've instrumented as a team, a big team, more than 165 vessels across the Western Central Pacific, or the Indo-Pacific, essentially. We've got Patagonian toothfish vessels down in the Southern Ocean. We've got prawn trawlers up in Northern Australia. We've got purse seine vessels in Papua New Guinea, scallop dredgers down in Bass Strait, and we've even got sea country rangers and Indigenous community participation from ranger vessels in very remote parts of Australia. So it is a huge collaborative effort. So the users get their data first. And, traditionally people might get a little Excel spreadsheet with their data, and there it is. It's pretty hard to get a grip. When you're out on a boat and you get a little Excel spreadsheet, you're sort of, what do I do with that? So we very early on in the program acknowledge we need to be delivering the data to fishers in a way they can access it. So we send them an email right away when the data comes on board with a little plot on it. So it's low bandwidth, so you can be out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean where, data transmission costs are high. Very tiny bandwidth. You get a little plot here showing your position and showing a plot of your data. So this is the data that comes down through the water column. This is with time, and this is the data or sensor going back up through the water column again. But what's really revolutionary is we've added context to our plots. So here we see the mean temperature through the water column. So this is an example at 50 meters depth, the mean temperature through the water column. And what we're seeing here is that the temperature on that day was 2 to 3 degrees above the mean. So it was really quite warm. You can also see that it's really well mixed, and you can get lots of insight from the plots then and there. Here's a different example where we're showing the data through the water column again, and it's a really warm anomaly, but down at depth, down at 400 to 500 meters. So the fishers that are fishing down here, they know what they're catching. We don't know what they're catching, but they can start to make a mental note and go, it was warmer than average down here. Did I catch or didn't I catch? And what is that correlation between the environment that the fish that I'm fishing in and the actual catch that I'm collecting? So they're starting to build this mental picture and get these real-time operational benefits. Here's another example where we see what might be considered unusual line behavior. So this is a line has gone down with a sensor on it, down through the water column, but it's been lifted up 150 meters in the middle of that set. And that is unusual. And so you can start to think, did something actually grab something and drag the line up to a depth, or what's been going on? So fishers are able to now look at these really visually and say, this is unusual. I got a lot of catch. I didn't get a lot of catch. What's going on? So we're getting a lot of feedback on this information that the fishers are receiving, saying this is really useful for operational decision-making. So we've been working with a whole range of partners. I've chosen Tuna Australia here to highlight because they're working really hard on the east coast of Australia, where I'm from. You can see we've had 2,500 deployments along the east coast of Australia, more than 1 million observations. They fish down to a depth of about 250 meters. And one of our vessels got nearly 10,000 observations in one set, which was just remarkable. And you can see the growth of the Australian program from 2023 through to 2025. These are our histograms of data and where they've been collected. So an example of a use case from Tuna Australia. This is an example of a marine heat wave. You might have heard that term. It's an unusually warm ocean event. Just like a heat wave on land, you can have heat waves in the water, and they're having a big impact on the seafood sector. We've never really been able to characterize them below the surface before. Here's an example of a plot that shows sea surface temperature along the east coast of Australia. It's all red, meaning it's really hot. Okay, so this is the 90th percentile ocean temperatures off the east coast of Australia. And here's my fishing vessel. This is a long liner. It's got 5 sensors on its line. This is its data, and it's fishing up in this region up here. The temperature is 29 degrees. So this is on the 4th of February that particular year. Over the next 3 weeks, that vessel gradually made its way southward, and it came down to this much cooler region, this cold core eddy, cyclonic eddy, where it found ocean temperatures of around 27 degrees. And at depth, it found them down 25 degrees. And we know tuna like temperature gradients. So there's a good 5-degree temperature gradient across that region. And these guys have been fishing, hunting down the coast, looking for their fish in the cooler water where the gradients are stronger. So they're able to use this data to actually guide their fishing practices, presumably save fuel, save bait, save time, and go and find the water that's cooler and more beneficial for the fishing. Another example is our hagfish operator. We have one guy catching hagfish down in southern New South Wales. He fishes at a depth of between 500 and 800 metres, and it's a live trap fishery. So he gets his sensor data. So he puts his trap down, collects his fish, and the sensor measures the ocean temperature. The live fish are returned to the surface and held in a holding tank. So the operational action there is that he receives his email in real time telling him the temperature at 500 to 800 metres where his fish were caught. And he adjusts the temperature in the holding tank to that temperature where the fish were caught. And so he's reported that he's able to reduce the stress on the animals and improve the quality of the fish that he's returning to market. And he described this program as transformative, which was really encouraging because he's getting real operational benefit. In the meantime, as an oceanographer, I'm getting vertical profiles of temperature through the water column down to 800 metres depth in a region we have very sparse data. So it's a win-win. Our third case study here is the lobster industry on the west coast of Australia. Has about 1,000 jobs in that industry, so it's profitable and important to the Australian program, or to the Australian seafood sector. Sorry, we have 2 vessels instrumented right now, and we're just in the process of instrumenting 8 more vessels in partnership with them. We use the Moana sensors out there, and these are an example of their wooden traps or pots where they collect their lobster. They've developed their own data dashboard, so they get their data in, and they've developed a dashboard showing the location of the drops, etc. But they're using the informatics in a different way. They're using it from a business perspective to look at the pot depths, how many pots were dropped at which depths, and how long they were in the water. So they can start to actually put data around, robust numbers around, the behaviour of the pots, where they've gone, how long they've stayed in the water, what depth they were, and then they can actually relate that to economics as well. They haven't even started to use the ocean temperature information that we're collecting. But the temperature information is amazing. It's beautiful time series here. This is from a group off the west coast of lobster fishers. And you can see through the water column, the temperature is quite mixed all the way through the water column. And this is the winter cycle from May through to October. So you can see the water cooling down through the winter months. We're just starting to build the time series. We started with these guys in May this year. So it is an emerging program or growing program. We're using the data in remarkable ways. My team are using it to improve the quality of the subsurface temperature information that we get in our ocean models. This is an example of an ocean model output. And you can see here, these are the observations on the right, and this is our model on the left. So we're actually improving the view through the water column and at the surface that we get because of this ocean information below the surface. Without subsurface information, you can't get high quality models. And these fronts, this is a front here, a gradient in temperature. These fronts are really important for various aspects or various parts of the fishing industry who, like tuna, for example. We have our data coming in real time on the Ocean Current website. You can access it there at that QR code. So anyone can come and have a little look at some of this ocean data. And you see these different examples. So this is off the east coast of Australia, We've had some remarkable conditions this year. Right now, we're getting really cold bottom water anomalies. You can see that here. So right on average at the surface, but very, very cold down at the bottom. So you can go and click on this website, look around and see what sort of data has been collected. Here's another example of different regions off the east coast of Australia. This is a warm water anomaly. It's these guys here. And then some really cold anomalies, or right on average temperatures, down in this region here. And this shows us the context, the anomalies, warm anomalies versus right on average versus cold anomalies. And finally, we're building capacity across the Western Central Pacific. And I see some of my colleagues from SPC and around the islands on the call. So thank you so much for joining. We have an ambition to instrument at least 50 vessels across the Western Central Pacific. Tuna is a really billion-dollar industry. We all have about 24 vessels instrumented already across Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Fiji, French Polynesia, and Samoa, with growth over the next 12 months. So it's really exciting to see that this benefit is coming back to the islands and the regions that really rely on tuna and on the seafood sector so substantially. And with that, I just want to acknowledge my collaborators and really stress that this is ocean observing by communities for communities. There's huge mutual benefit from the program, and we're really grateful for the collaboration and the co-investment from our colleagues and collaborators.
Thank you, Moninya. So I am going to jump back in time a little bit to the Moana project that Moninya had mentioned, and then jump forward again into as the Moana project transitions from a discrete research project to the long-term vision for some of the outcomes from those projects. So this presentation is on behalf of the Moana Project and the Aotearoa Moana Observing System teams, and I'll get into in a few slides exactly what those are. So the New Zealand is a unique area in that we have a huge exclusive economic zone in comparison to the amount of land that we have. So our ocean is 15 times our land area. It's a big portion of the global ocean relative to the amount of land we have. It expands from subtropical to subantarctic latitudes, so we have a wide range of ecosystems. A biodiversity hotspot. We have marine mammals from marine mammal capital of the world, and we're also a seabird capital of the world. So the Moana Project was an $11.5 million 5-year-long research project that aimed to better understand this exclusive economic zone and the ocean that it's in. There were 4 main research themes. So He Hona Moana, the connectivity portion of the project that looks at species connectivity. Ngaripa o Te Moana, the ocean modeling component of the project that had included a hindcast of ocean temperature, currents, salinity, and a forecast of the next 7 days of those same parameters. He Papa Moana, which is the Mātauranga Maori or traditional knowledge component of the project, and Te Tira Moana, which is the ocean observing component of the project. So all 4 of these themes work together. The results and the data from these themes are interconnected. And the temperature profiling portion of the project, or the fishing vessel observing portion of the project that Moninya introduced, is a part of the Te Tira Moana theme. So that's where we're really a part of FVON, the Fishing Vessel Ocean Observing Network. And they're all working together to better understand our ocean. So the Moana Project had its final hui in September of 2023. Part of the goal of that project was to produce ongoing outcomes. So while the project as a research program wrapped up, we didn't want the benefit of the project to end there. And so we transitioned the outcomes of those research themes into longer term products and tools. So the fishing vessel ocean observing component of the project transitioned into the Aotearoa Moana observing system. So we took all of the vessels that participated in the original project and we're in the process of signing them on into managing the project under a charitable trust. We have over 250 vessels that participated, over 38 million observations. That's actually many, many more. And tens of thousands of sensor deployments. Most of our vessels are commercial fishing vessels. We have some citizen science vessels and some research vessels as well. And together, the commercial fishing sector and our citizen scientists, researchers create a picture of how ocean temperature is changing below the surface around the Aotearoa New Zealand exclusive economic zone. So during the Moana Project, we aimed to roll out to as many vessels as we could, up to 300 sensors deployed. So we successfully did that. As a result, our sensor rollout concluded in 2022, so that's when we reached our 300 sensors. Between 2022 and 2025, we have about 33,000 sensor deployments per year, about 11 million observations per year, and about 40 years of combined time underwater by all sensors per year. So that's maintained relatively well throughout those 3 years. We have some variation due to seasons, due to natural disasters, things like that. But the system is actually quite robust over time. And this map on the left shows the kind of coverage we get around Aotearoa, New Zealand, and that we're really managing to quite well observe that coastal gap in temperature between where we had existing ocean observations and the shelf seas and the coast. So it's been an incredibly successful program, partnered with the commercial fishing sector and our citizen science vessels who have been very, very supportive and continue to deploy these sensors and provide their feedback to develop the sensor with our technology partner ZebraTech, who developed the Moana sensor specifically for this program, as Cooper and Moninya have mentioned, and to deploy them and to continue to improve the system over time. So what do we actually do with that data? One of the things that we do is we look at marine heat waves, particularly below the ocean surface. So marine heat waves are traditionally diagnosed from surface measurements, largely because we have satellite measurements all around the globe. We have far fewer measurements below the ocean surface of ocean temperature. So this is one example where we looked at ocean temperature in a region that's critical to New Zealand rock lobster. So the rock lobster fishers there had been noticing that for a few years they were having essentially limp rock lobsters being caught, and they were trying to understand why. They knew it was related to temperature, but they didn't have actual measurements. So they went back, and this is done with the University of Otago, and looked at exactly what was happening below the ocean surface. So these plots come from the sensor data deployed by vessels in that region. You can see we have data between the surface and 200 meters depth over a span of a few months, so nearly a year. And right around 50 meters depth, we have this warm water that's about 20 degrees. If we compare that to the average temperature at that depth in that region during those times of year, you can see that right around the end of March, middle of March, we had ocean temperatures at around 50 meters depth that were almost 5 degrees Celsius above average. So this is really significant to that fishery, and it helped them understand why they were seeing the catch they were seeing. And it helps them plan for the future as well. The longer we have these types of networks in the water, the better we can look back over time and pick out trends and try to predict the future. So how do we do that? We look at ocean forecasting through ocean modeling. So as I mentioned, the Moana Project had an ocean modeling team that developed and produced a 25-year hindcast of temperature, salinity, and current velocity along the sea surface height, and a 7-day ocean forecast. These observations that our fishing vessels capture can help us improve these ocean forecasts and hindcasts by either forcing the model to match the observations or by retroactively comparing the model to observations to make sure models are accurate. So fishers might want to look at a 7-day forecast for their operations, and they might want to look at a 25-year hindcast to understand their catch in the past. So the Moana Project transitioned the marine heat wave forecast from their website to a long-term product within the Swell Map app and Swell Map website. So you can have a look at swellmap.com, and you can see on the left here is what the marine heat wave forecast looks like in that app, where we have the New Zealand divided up into different regions that you can see by these boxes, and where we have strong marine heat waves, we have darker color, red, brown. Where there's no heat waves, it's a clear box. So last week we had marine heat wave conditions around much of the North Island of New Zealand. And you can also look within that app at the sea temperature forecast at different depths. So this map on the right is an example of the forecast at 200 meters depth. So in the case where a fisher is aiming to fish a certain temperature, they could potentially use this forecast to do so. Some of the feedback that we've received is that the higher resolution, the better. So that's something to work on in the future and to consider in developing future products. If you click on one of the boxes in the marine heat wave forecast on the left, it will bring you to a detailed page for that location. So we can look back for about a little bit over a month in each location, and then we get our 7-day forecast as well, where the black line is the hindcast and forecasted sea surface temperature. Where we see red, it means that we're in marine heat wave conditions. So in this region, we had moderate marine heat wave conditions in the recent past, with expectation of non-marine heat wave conditions in the next 7 days, although they kind of just went by. But so this is an example of transitioning a research project outcome from the Moana Project into a long-term product that fishers and other ocean users continue to use. We can also use our ocean models that are improved by the fishing observations to look at particle tracking. And so this is a way we can understand how certain species may have source or sink regions and understand why their populations are where they are. And so in the Moana Project, we developed a particle tracking model that is available now on the New Zealand Met Services Insights platform. The link is below. And you can go there and have a look for free. So it uses an open source numerical model. It uses those models that were developed that we just talked about as part of the Moana Project. It also looks at waves and winds that influence how particles might move on regional to global scales. And so we can also define how our particles that we release work to make them match biology as best that we can. So here's an example of doing that. This is looking at cuckoo or green lip mussels, which are a really important species in New Zealand for many, many reasons, from food to traditional practices. And so here we're looking at releasing particles from a mussel farm and trying to understand where the mussel larvae might come from and where they might go to. So this is important for managing that mussel farm, and we worked really closely with Whakatohea, the Maori iwi that manages that mussel farm, to help them understand or provide information so they can understand what might be happening to that mussel farm now and in the future. And there's more information about that in the paper cited below. All right, and then, so those are some examples of outcomes from the research projects that are ongoing and have been transitioned to longer term products. So back to the sensor program that is now being managed by a charitable trust called Aotearoa Marine Observing System, or AMOS. that will act as a caretaker of the sensor network. One of the key things is ensuring open access of the collected data. So we do share the data open access, but anonymously. And that's to protect the fishers. We also can promote that data use for public good, make sure that it's actually usable, that there's actual uptake, and that the tools that we provide are appropriate for our different users, and ensure the long-term sustainability of the sensor network. So we are hoping to lead by example, participate and provide support, champion the AMOS mission, and advocate for the involvement of the wider ocean community. And the new sensor program website is there at amos.org.nz. And so it is governed by representatives from Cawthron, New Zealand's Met Service, UNSW, and Zebratech, who again has been involved in the program from the beginning to develop our hardware, our system, our sensor system, and is a huge reason why we have such a robust ocean observing system now. So the Moana Project has had over 65 researchers, and we had many, many partnerships beyond those researchers in addition to them. So thanks to everybody who was involved in the project, who continues to be involved in outcomes from that project. And also, thanks to Zebratech, the Moana Project and AMOS teams are obviously our vessels and many, many others. Yeah, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Julie and Moninya. Now we are jump from south to north, arriving Japan. Okay, let me show. Okay, can you see this? I'd like to introduce our activity named Smart Fisheries Network in Japan. Actually, what you are watching is one collaborating fisher vessel. This is just one of the fishing vessel. No, it doesn't move. Okay, yeah. One of these over 300 vessels cooperating to our project. Actually, this is very small vessel, like a fishing boat. And this kind of vessel is operating more maybe a little fewer than 100,000 in Japan. So this 300 is just a small fraction. We aim at more numbers collaborators in our network. Okay, anyway, so we already working this project more than 8 years. So already we established the data exchange. That's our main axis of this network. The fishing vessel observation data helps the coastal ocean prediction like me. The eventually coastal oceanography as a science. And our feedback is also data. It's not the money, actually. The ocean prediction helps their activity and more efficient fisheries activities. So our project has three main goals that already main collaborators from especially local governments. Okay, if you like to check the organizations, you can visit this website. Okay, I like to show basically some important comments from the collaborating fishermen. Okay, the first two is very simple. This is the Japanese CTD, pretty much this size, like 1 kilogram. And this toy CTD allows the measurement of the temperature or salinity profiles at the fishing site. So some fishermen didn't even know the salinity change, only a 1/1000th of, it's so small fraction, but very correlated with the nutrient conditions. And the second one, some serious fishers take some notes of temperature at bottom. Actually, coastal fisheries usually, targets bottom fishers, seabed. And then if they find that good correlations of temperature and fish amount, then they can decide where to go by themselves. So these number one and two are for fishermen themselves. And the third part, the three and four are a little need more explanation. Okay. Okay. Some mid-depth fish, not near the bottom or not near the surface. This is, for example, trawler fishing way. The trawler needs to keep the target depth. But but sometimes they don't know how the trawl net behaves from the ship because this is very small scale. There is no real-time monitoring systems. But if he attach the CT sensor like this part, they can understand how this fishing gear behaves in the sea waters. And then they can adjust the fishing vessel velocity later on. So that makes a good catches and always this fishing gear stays at good levels. Okay, that's the first example. And the second effect is the temperature of the water box. Okay. This is a coastal fishery. The Japanese consumer prefers very fresh fishes like sushi. So they need keep the fishes alive. So to do so, they need to know the temperature and eventually salinity condition at the target level. So this CTD measurement allows the water temperature best quality, most suitable conditions for the transportations. And then eventually the consumers are happy to have a fresh fishes. Okay. And then we reach to many numbers of measurements. In my region here already makes over 10,000 castings per year, which is almost equivalent to the 20 years of CTD measurement, professional measurement in this part. So we must be careful about this quality of CTD, but number is so tremendous. Now, okay. Then after that, this is my role. I'm ocean modeler, so we need to improve my ocean model. Actually, improved it. The most improving part is the ocean current. The velocity errors are so reduced now. Then basically the fishermen are happy to see these improved predictions. And finally, by using Ocean Prediction App, this one service like one week ahead, the forecast of ocean current helps to avoid strong current condition. Fishing gears are so small, so strong tide makes the uncontrollable conditions for coastal fishing case. And then the result, the operating hours and fuels are greatly reduced. This is one example, one best practice. Before without the prediction, this further and decided where to go. That actually the fishing condition was not very good. So that makes they need about 20 operations of trawlers per day. That's a busy case. And with my ocean prediction, they can save the operation time because they know that already before the departure, the good where to go. and which is the order to visit the fishing ground, C first, and then B, maybe in this case. That makes the huge saving of fuels and working hours here. 20% of reduction. Yeah, that's a great reduction in this case. Okay, and the third point, sometimes they claim the prediction. This is not very accurate. And this is what I want, indeed. In this case, this no one, but two or three fishers said to me the same comments. This prediction is sometimes delayed by 1 or 2 hours. Then I realized tidal condition must be not very good. So I modify the tidal motions by using technical word model greens functions or data simulations. Then the result, the correlation coefficient of velocity motion to the measurement is slightly improved from 0.92 to 0.94, only a small fraction. And by looking the difference, I thought these changes are not very big. But one fisherman, this guy, told to me, yeah, this prediction was suddenly good. Then he talked this episode at the meeting, and then he got the Fisheries Agency Award this year. Actually, then I learned that this is not the way of watching the ocean from the fisher's point of view, but they were watching at sight velocity. In this case, the tidal motion is basically good for the large amplitude, but for the small tide or neap tide, the difference is a little bit larger. So they are watching this white and green curves, the difference. Okay. Another example benefit by improving the ocean prediction is the prediction for the particles. Like this case, Karenia mikimotoi, that's one of the harmful species of red tide. In this island, very clean water, so usually free from the red tide, but face the problem this year, 2000 something, the 21, and then by tracking later, this one come from the mainland and then going back to the mainland again. So this kind of simulation is possible based on the improved prediction by the fishermen. Okay. And this data all even constrain not only my ocean model, but the other coastal ocean models in Japan, in this case from Japan's Meteorological Agency or no, this one, JMA or Fisheries Research Agency and so on. We are comparing and improving each models based on the fishermen data today. So here is a difference so far, quite large. Yeah, it's still hard to make a good forecast in coastal waters. But yeah, ocean measurement by fishermen promise the improvement of these ocean models. Okay, here is the take-home message. Maybe time's up. I better stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. So yeah, I think we thank you very much to everyone for their presentations. So when we first came up with the idea to create a go-to global community of Fish Tech Connect, share information, knowledge and expertise, we were keen to showcase the broad use of technology globally through webinars and events. And I think today's presentation really fulfills that task. There's been a fantastic share and insights to the presenters' work and definitely the multi benefits of tech. So now I'd like to encourage our audience to use the Q&A option that you can see at the bottom of the screen to ask questions. I can then pick them up and ask on your behalf. If you would like to speak, then we can unmute you and you can ask your question that way. We've already got a few questions that come in, so I'm going to go straight to those questions. So, Cooper, good presentation. I like the democratizing ocean data collection. How can we channel fishermen's contributions into a common user-friendly platform, give them credit points, and can Goose formally recognize them as citizen ocean observers?
And thank you for the question, Ben Cat. Great to see you here. I think this is something that we're not really even scratching the surface on, and that there's tremendous opportunity for that. And, I think I'm maybe going out on a little bit of a limb in terms of personally where I think we should do this or how we should take this rather than what's FVON official. But, I think the branding opportunity of climate conscious fisheries, in the same way we have Marine Stewardship Council, or branding is very important for seafood consumers. And so I think that there is a role to be played here with GOOS, IOC, the UN Decade, these kind of things, with branding seafood and essentially giving access to better markets for fishers who are contributing to making the world a better place, essentially. So that's one direction that I see this being productive. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Cooper. I'm going to go straight on to the next question. So we've got Sonia from Tunisia. Sonia would like to know if there is any data or analysis regarding the impact of El Nino or La Nina on ocean temperature and consequently on fisheries. So maybe that's Moninya and Julie, perhaps?
I can have a go. Thank you for the question. Indeed, El Nino was first identified by fishers off the west coast of South America. They found these different ocean temperatures occurred around Christmas time, and they called it El Nino, the Christ child. It came at Christmas, these unusual ocean temperatures. So that was the genesis of ocean sciences around El Nino. It was identified by fishers. The impact of El Nino across the globe differs. So every region will have and experience a different impact. And so lots of people are doing a lot of work looking regionally at these impacts of large climate drivers and the connection, teleconnections across the global ocean, but also the relationship with different modes of variability. So, if you're interested in Tunisia particularly, you can go and look in the Mediterranean, the impact of ENSO, either El Nino or La Nina in that region. I'm not familiar of the impact there, but no doubt there is work ongoing because it is very much regional specific impacts that impact fisheries. And I think we're all regional oceanographers and people who care very deeply about the coastal ocean. We need to connect more with the global ocean community who study, longer scale, bigger picture phenomenon and then bring it into the regions where it has a huge societal benefit and impact. So thank you for the question.
I think I might just add, this is one of the reasons why it's very important to have these types of fishing vessel ocean observing networks sustainable over long periods of time, because El Nino changes on the scale of years, so 2 to 7 years, kind of in that range. And so if your network is only out, deployed for 3 years, you're not really going to be able to use the data to its fullest capabilities to understand how those things are changing. Of course, there's things you can do, but the longer we have the networks operational and continuing to observe in a given region, the more types of this analysis we can do using FVON data. As Moninya said, there's many studies out there and many researchers working on this kind of thing. But when it comes to FVON data specifically, the more sustainable we can make these networks in terms of long-term deployment, the better.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. I'm going to move on to our next question. Cooper, are you currently, or do you have plans to collect acoustic echo sounder data as part of FVON?
So this is a big one, and it's a tricky data type. And I will say at FVON currently we are not addressing that type of data, and I assume that the question is on fish biomass or something like that from echo sounder data. But that's certainly something that we could take up in the future. Data standardization is quite tricky on that one. But to follow up on this question, I'd like to pass the mic over to Nick, because on the ADCP data, if you want to elaborate on ADCP.
Yeah, we are currently working on ADCP. Yeah, some data. Yeah, indeed, the fish finders data, you mean, that's tricky. Yeah. Actually, technology is not too difficult. Yeah, we can collect the data, but the post process maybe has some issues. Yeah, as you said.
Can I comment on that? Thanks for the question. And acoustic data is really valuable for many fisheries, but it's not easy, right? So as Nick said, the post-processing is challenging, the calibration of the sensors is challenging, and it's quite bespoke. So on one hand, one vessel in a fleet that has a high-quality echo sounder collecting really high-quality data could be really valuable. But I don't think we can expect to get that across every vessel on the fleet. To know that the data is research quality and is well calibrated and maintained. And that's what's so important to this program, to GOOS, is that the data are research quality data as well as citizen science data. So that's a challenge, and we're working in the Pacific. I see one of my collaborators is online. He's very keen to get some of this data out of the Pacific, but it's a much bigger operation than popping a little temperature sensor on a line or a net.
Fabulous, thank you. I'll move on to the next question. So Andrew Wright, 3 great illustrations of FVON. Congratulations to all. Particularly useful validating model forecasts and projections with actual observations. So the question is, what's the funding model experience for sustainable financing the vessel gear, sensor and deck units? Who read it?
Question to me?
Nick?
You mean finance issue? I mean, how we maintain the money issue?
What's your so it's a question about what's the funding model experience for sustainable financing the vessel gear? So how are you able to finance and sustain that with providing that gear to the 300?
That's always a hard issue. Yeah. And for the coastal fishes in Japan tend to be secret, hide their activities. So that makes the situation even difficult. That we cannot open the measurement data because they don't like it. So we tend to find rather the more commercial side to support our activity, like a consulting to company or the wind turbine, energy companies. That they are the good sponsors these days. Yeah, but it's always difficult. I mean, I'm always trying to find the money, honestly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe can we hear from Moninya as well on that? Because I think the different programs have different models that are really interesting. sorry to interject.
Our program is, the backbone is funded by our Ocean Observing Program, the Integrated Marine Observing System. And that by backbone, I mean the data informatics piece. So we know that the data is going to be processed and quality controlled. I'm banging on about rigorous research quality data. I think you get the picture. The collaborators are contributing the cost of the hardware. So they buy into the program to collaborate. So it's a partnership. It's a sponsorship model. We're going along those lines in New Zealand as well, where industry is sponsoring into the program or donating or collaborating, whatever you like to call it. But that underlying data informatics piece that supports the rigor of the program is funded through our Ocean Observing Program. And it works very well because people like to see that they're contributing to the global good, but also getting maximum benefit from the program. And all our data are open access. So people can go off and do whatever they want on their own, but if they want to collaborate with us, they get a subsidized program and the data are open access.
Thank you, Moninya. I'm going to jump to a question, Nick. I'm not sure, and there's a question here from Jimmy. I'm not sure I saw the maximum depth of your sensors. How deep can they go, gathering both temperature and salinity data? Also, they're wondering what it would cost for a vessel to get a sensor or two and the related hardware.
Yeah, Japanese sensor goes to 500-meter depths, but maybe Moninya's or Julie's are deeper.
We have 3 models with the ZebraTech sensors. We have a 200-meter sensor, a 1,000-meter sensor, and a 2,000-meter sensor. At the moment, ZebraTech just have a temperature sensor, but they're working on salinity at the moment. So watch this space.
Thank you. Julie, would you like to answer on that one?
I think that pretty much answers it since, yeah, we're using the Moana sensor as well.
So let's go to question here for what do you see as the biggest barrier to adoption when it comes to vessel data collection? Who would like to answer that one? I'm going to say Moninya, thank you.
I can
I'll just
give my
pick
2 cents.
someone.
It is the cost of the hardware in our program, right? So if we can get collaborators, sponsors, people donating the hardware, everything else is in place. We just have to get the sensors on the vessels. The ongoing operational costs are low. There's some data transmission costs and there's sensor calibration. And again, that's part of rigorous research quality data is that you calibrate your sensors and look after them. So there are some replacement costs. So sort of every 5 years, I think we're going to have to do a sensor renewal, but calibration along the way. So to me, we have the coalition of the willing. The seafood sector see the value in the data. They see social license to operate. They see the benefit to the greater good. We have plenty of vessels who have, or programs that have co-invested and sponsored gear because of this value. And by putting the fisher at the heart of the program and getting their data back to them in real time as quickly as possible, they can use it in so many different ways. And so I think it really is, with rising fuel costs and competition, fishers don't have the money to pay, small fisheries, local fisheries don't have the money to pay, or artisanal fishers don't have the money to pay, but these are the people we should be sponsoring and supporting and getting money for the hardware. The rest of it's easy. That's my program, my view. People might have a different view.
Thank you, super.
I just want to add on to that in a slightly different angle. As Moninya said, fishers are excited about this. A lot of people think, oh, getting the fishers on board is going to be the hardest part. Not at all. And it's easier than even I thought it would be coming from that background. Yes, the instrument and the tech is, you know, a large cost component of what we're doing. But, you know, we are still, you know, as an ocean observing system or per temperature profile or whatever system you want to look at, you know, we are still, you know, extremely cost competitive. And so to me, the biggest barrier is not necessarily financing the hardware, but it is a more kind of existential problem and trickier problem is that I would say today's ocean observing financing is not well suited for observation networks at scale that are sustained. You know, I think we need a shift in thinking to, you know, ocean observing is critical national infrastructure. It supports all these functionalities, ranging from fisheries to typhoon forecasting and everything like that. And rather than just being financed by scientific grants, which lead to start and stop funding and, you know, leads to kind of patchy data, particularly in the coastal region. So, you know, that's, I think, our bigger battle here in, you know, taking that. But, you know, having the fishers on board is essential throughout that and kind of opens up innovative financing, you know, by making it such a win there. So
Maybe from my experience, maybe biggest barrier is how to maintain the fishermen motivation. The they start very interesting, and for the first few months, they intensively measure the ocean, but afterwards, going down their faces. So always, yeah, how to keep their numbers and the activities. That's always my biggest issue probably. Yeah.
I
Thank
think
you.
in New Zealand, the things that have already been mentioned are the biggest barriers. I'd say one of the next ones we're running into is related to what has already been said about fuel costs rising. So we have vessels that are no longer fishing, and there's only so many vessels in New Zealand. So we are dependent on the fishing industry and the number of vessels that are participating in it. So there is that, and right now it isn't critically affecting the program, but you know, it has the potential to have some impact in the future.
Thank you, Julie. I'm going to jump to one here, mindful of time as well, from Callie. It seems like you can deduce quite some information regarding location-specific fishing activity that could be sensitive for the fishers. So how do you build the trust with the sector to share the data? How do you balance the importance of data transparency and privacy of the participating parties? So that's to all. Who wants to go first on that one?
I can jump in.
Thank you.
So one of the things we did starting from the beginning of the Moana project is we involved the fishing sector directly in the development of the program. So they volunteered their time, and that consisted of the sector representative entities, who basically represent different pieces of the New Zealand fishing sector, and individual vessels and fishing companies. So we took their perspective incredibly seriously because the program depended on it, and they had incredibly valuable input into the program. So I think that helped a lot, and we followed through with those discussions. And then just time as well for certain vessels. So we did have some vessels that were hesitant at the beginning, and then when they saw over time other vessels participating, and our intent was to respect their concerns or their perspectives, we had more vessels join on board the program. So I think one of the key things is basically co-design with the fishing sector and having a genuine co-design with the fishing sector, I would say.
This is something I feel very strongly about. And we work with the Coalition of the Willing, the people who are okay to share their positional information. And I think there are plenty of people who aren't, and that's okay, right? We don't need to. There are 5,000 tuna vessels in the Western Central Pacific. If we can get 10% of them, we're in good shape, We're not collecting any catch information. And I make that point very explicit. We don't know if you're catching. We only know that the sensor has gone in the water. And that's also, it's a fine sort of line to walk, but their fishing information is proprietary to them. All we're collecting is ocean temperatures. We have some fisheries that, because there are low numbers of vessels at this point in time, have requested the information not be made available until an embargoed period of time, until the season is over. And I think that's really reasonable. Some of them have allowed us to transmit the data in real time to the global telecommunications system to help tomorrow's ocean weather forecast, but they don't want us transmitting it on the web to help their competitor. And so there's lots of different conversations we can have around what is satisfactory. We have another fishery that did request some rounding of the positional information, but they're still happy to share the information. Now, if you think about a global ocean model with a resolution of 10 kilometers, if you have observations within that 10-kilometer box, it's all averaged into one observation anyway. So you can have quite various degrees of resolution and still have value. So it's a conversation we have with each and every individual, and we work with them to find a solution that they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay. My side, a little bit negative, that because the nearshore data, especially coastal fishermen, do not agree to share the data, especially out of Japan. That if we go a little offshore, like 100 kilometers from the coast, maybe, yeah, possible. So we are discussing which data can be shared, the others not. So we are still debating the boundary of the data sharing, international, domestic, or even just private. Yeah, that's still ongoing discussion in our group.
Just a couple more things that haven't been said. I think for the most part, all of our groups are only sharing data anonymously. So if there are enough vessels in a region, you're not really going to be able to tell who's who. And that, the bigger the network gets, the better that works. Another thing that I hear in a lot of different regions is, there's no more secrets in this industry. The government and everybody else already knows 3 times over where everybody else is fishing. So we don't care. As Moninya said, it would be very different if we were asking for catch data. So, it varies. And then as Nick is saying, it does vary regionally. But actually the trickiest place we've had to deal with this is in Alaska, where there are conflicts between different fisheries who are, suing each other for bycatch and things like that. And so that's been the trickiest one. It's nothing to do with regulation or anything like that. So
Thank you, Cooper. I'm going to we've got a couple of minutes for the end, so we have a good number of questions that we haven't got to, but just to let you know, what we will do is we'll answer these questions after the event. What I really want to do is I want to bring in Aubrey. So Aubrey, basically, Aubrey works in the Oceans Technology Solutions team at the Environmental Defence Fund, EDF, and is leading the FVON Secretariat. So I'd like Aubrey to share with us now, before we're half past from the hour. She's going to share with us some information relating to contact details, follow-ups, and more. So Aubrey, if I can just pass over to you to share that information, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Inga. And thanks for that great Q&A session to everyone who is here and who asked such great questions. This is wrapping up the first ever FVON webinar series, so we are really excited to have everyone here. We didn't have time for all of the questions, so we will be posting the rest and answering them on the ocean observing space on the SafeEd platform called FishTech Connect. You can join on that bottom QR code on the screen. And if you'd like to stay connected with FVON, we encourage you to explore our website, which is the above bar QR code. You can join our newsletter there, or you can email us directly at info@fvon.org. We're also going to be at the Ocean Sciences meeting in Glasgow in February, and we'll be hosting a community side event that is open to everyone. There's also an online meeting link if you aren't able to attend in person. So please join our newsletter or reach out if you would like to stay up to date on that. And we have a lot of really exciting work going on across FVON with a sensor and a comparison study, some ongoing best practice and capacity building development, new pilots that are launching in the North Atlantic, Tanzania and the Pacific Islands, and elsewhere. So please let us know if you're interested in following any of that and if you'd like to see any more webinars on any of those topics. And then just as a final note, I'd like to take a moment to give a huge thank you to our speakers, Cooper, Moninya, Julie, Nick. Thank you so much for sharing and presenting today. Thank you to Emma Heslop, who moderated, and Inga, thank you so much for moderating. And to Laura and Chimpika for also helping to make this happen behind the scenes. You should all be sure to check out the GOOS website for more webinars that are on ocean observing. They currently have a series running about biology and ecosystems EOVs. And SafeEd just launched Sea Tech in Motion, which is a platform for sharing fisheries tech success stories around the world. So take a look at that when you have a chance to. So thank you all again for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day. I will pass back to Inga for final remarks.
Yes, just to echo that, thank you very much. Huge thank you to Aubrey for arranging this and making this happen today. So yeah, and just to reiterate, so if we didn't get to your question, then the presentation, you'll be able to access that on FishTech Connect within the next 24 hours, and the questions will be answered by presenters. But equally, still keep bringing those questions forward and connect with our speakers. And thank you very much for everyone today. Have a wonderful evening, morning, day, wherever you may be in the world. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.